Welcome to the mythical creatures.
Imagine wandering through a dense, ancient forest, the air filled with the scent of pine and the soft rustling of leaves. As you step deeper into the wilderness, you begin to feel a presence, an unseen watchfulness from the towering trees around you. This is no ordinary forest. You've entered a realm where myth meets nature, where the spirits of the woods come to life. The world of the Dryads. In the mythology of ancient Greece, Dryads were the ethereal spirits of the trees. They were considered nymphs, which are minor nature deities, but their connection to the forest ran deeper than most. You see, Dryads weren't just protectors of the trees, they were the trees. These spirits were tied to their arboreal homes, and their very existence depended on the life of the tree they inhabited. If the tree flourished, so did the Dryad. But if the tree withered or was destroyed, the Dryad's life would end as well. It's a bond that reflects the profound respect ancient cultures had for nature and its delicate balance. The word Dryad comes from the Greek word dries, meaning oak, which makes sense since the first Dryads were thought to inhabit oak trees, specifically. However, over time, the concept evolved, and Dryads became associated with all trees, expanding their presence throughout the forests of myth. They were known as the spirits that guarded the groves, ancient woods, and sacred trees, representing the divine essence of nature itself. But there were many types of Dryads, each with a unique role and affinity for different kinds of trees. One of the most well-known types of Dryads is the Hamadryad. These nymphs were inseparably bound to a specific tree, living their entire existence within it. The life of a Hamadryad was tied to the health of their tree, which meant that the cutting down or destruction of that tree would result in the death of the spirit within it. To the ancient Greeks, this concept carried significant weight. Cutting down a tree without respecting the spirit within could lead to dire consequences. In fact, it was believed to anger the gods if a mortal harmed a tree inhabited by a Hamadryad. A perfect example of this can be found in the myth of Erisichthon, a Thessalian king known for his arrogance and disrespect for the gods. In one story, Erisichthon, driven by greed and hunger for more land, ordered the felling of a massive sacred oak tree that was home to a Hamadryad. Despite warnings from his followers, the king was relentless, cutting down the tree himself. As the oak fell, the Hamadryad within cried out to Demeter, the goddess of the harvest and fertility, for vengeance. In response, Demeter cursed Erisichthon with insatiable hunger, a punishment so severe that no matter how much he ate, his hunger only grew. Eventually, his endless hunger led him to ruin, and he consumed everything he owned before tragically devouring himself. This myth emphasizes the sacred bond between Dryads and their trees, and serves as a timeless reminder of the consequences of disregarding the natural world. Beyond the Hamadryads, there are other types of Dryads, each with their own unique traits. The Meliai are associated with ash trees and hold a particularly special place in mythology. According to one legend, the Meliai were born from the blood of Uranus, the sky god, when he was overthrown by his son Cronus. These nymphs were considered protectors of mankind, teaching early humans skills such as agriculture and helping to guide the development of civilization. The ash tree, strong and durable, was often used to craft tools and weapons, making the Meliai vital in the advancement of human society. Another interesting type of tree spirit is the Epimeliad, the protector of apple trees, and, in some cases, sheep. Apple trees were highly valued in ancient Greece, both for their fruit and for their association with fertility and abundance. Epimeliads, in their dual role, watched over these trees as well as the livestock that grazed beneath them, emphasizing the interconnectedness of all life: trees, animals, and humans. Perhaps one of the most famous tree nymphs in all of Greek mythology is Daphne. Her story is a tragic one, involving unrequited love and divine intervention. Daphne was a beautiful nymph, known for her grace and independence, and she caught the eye of the god Apollo, who was struck by one of Eros's arrows and fell hopelessly in love with her. But Daphne had no desire for Apollo's affections. She was devoted to remaining chaste and free, much like the goddess Artemis, with whom she was closely associated. When Apollo pursued her relentlessly, Daphne called out to her father, the river god Peneus, to save her. In response, Peneus transformed her into a laurel tree, allowing her to escape Apollo's advances, but forever binding her spirit to the tree. In a bittersweet twist, Apollo, stricken with grief, declared the laurel tree sacred to him and wore a crown of its leaves as a symbol of his eternal love for Daphne. Even in her transformation, Daphne remained a symbol of beauty, purity, and nature's power to resist and endure. Her story exemplifies the themes of metamorphosis that are so prevalent in Greek mythology, where mortals and gods alike often become one with nature through such transformations. The Dryads, especially those like Daphne, are closely linked with Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, wilderness, and wild animals. Artemis herself is a fiercely independent deity who roams the forests, accompanied by a retinue of nymphs, including Dryads. Together, they represent the untamed spirit of the wilderness, and they fiercely protect their sacred groves from those who would seek to harm them. Artemis's connection to the Dryads further highlights their role as guardians of the forest, enforcing the idea that nature is not to be taken lightly. And then there's Pan, the wild god of shepherds, flocks, and rustic music, who also shares a strong bond with the Dryads. Pan's realm is the deep wilderness, the untamed forests where Dryads dwell. Often depicted as playful and mischievous, Pan personifies the raw, untamed forces of nature. He would dance through the woods, play his flute, and befriend the Dryads, who were drawn to his carefree, joyful spirit. Their connection reflects the balance of wildness and beauty that the ancient Greeks saw in nature, dangerous and chaotic at times, but also full of life and harmony. Dryads also appear frequently in Greek literature and poetry. Writers such as Homer and Ovid spoke of their beauty and mystery, often using them as symbols of nature's purity and fragility. In Ovid's Metamorphoses, we find numerous tales of transformation and encounters with the divine, many involving nymphs like Dryads. They appear not only as protectors of the forest, but also as figures that challenge the arrogance of mortals, teaching lessons about humility and the power of the natural world. But the influence of Dryads doesn't stop with ancient Greece. They've woven their way into modern literature and popular culture as well. One of the most famous modern representations of Dryads comes from C.S. Lewis' The Chronicles of Narnia. In Narnia, the forest is alive with Dryads and other tree spirits who serve as guardians of the land. They play an active role in helping the protagonists, offering guidance and protection in their battles against the forces of evil. Lewis, inspired by his love of mythology, used the figure of the Dryad to express the magic and mystery of the natural world in his stories. Even today, Dryads continue to captivate our imagination, appearing in everything from fantasy novels to video games and movies. Their deep connection to nature, their ethereal beauty, and their role as protectors of the forest make them enduring symbols of the environment and its importance. In a world where deforestation and environmental degradation are pressing issues, the story of the Dryad serves as a timeless reminder of the need to respect and protect the natural world. So the next time you walk through a forest, take a moment to listen to the wind in the trees, the rustling of the leaves, and the creaking of ancient branches. Who knows? You may just be in the presence of a Dryad, watching over her home, guarding the delicate balance between life and nature, as she has for thousands of years. As we delve deeper into the world of Dryads, their mystique becomes even more fascinating. Their existence within the realms of myth and imagination transcends simple folklore, weaving them into the very fabric of ancient belief systems, where the natural world and the divine were often intertwined. To the ancient Greeks, Dryads were far more than mere figments of fantasy. They were the very embodiment of the sacredness of nature. Their myths reflect a world in which trees and forests weren't just natural resources to be harvested. They were living, breathing entities deserving of reverence and care. The Dryads' connection to trees, particularly sacred groves, was an integral part of ancient Greek religious practice. Many groves were considered sacred to the gods, and these places were often under the protection of tree nymphs. Cutting down a tree or damaging a sacred grove without offering prayers or making sacrifices was not only seen as an act of sacrilege, but also as a violation of the divine order. Such acts often had consequences, as the myths tell us, and the gods did not take lightly the harm inflicted upon nature. This idea of the sacredness of certain natural spaces highlights how Dryads, in many ways, functioned as intermediaries between the mortal and divine realms, embodying the concept of nature as a divine force that demanded respect. Beyond Greece, tree spirits similar to Dryads appear in the myths and folklore of many other cultures. In Celtic mythology, for instance, trees were often believed to house spirits or serve as conduits for supernatural forces. The Celts held trees in the highest regard, especially the oak, ash, and yew, which they considered to be sacred. In Celtic lands, trees were sometimes called Cran Bethad, or Tree of Life, and were believed to connect the heavens, earth, and underworld. Like the Dryads of Greece, the spirits inhabiting these trees were considered guardians of the forest and protectors of the balance between the human world and nature. The Norse had their own version of sacred trees, with Yggdrasil, the world tree, being the most famous example. Yggdrasil was said to connect the 9 realms of Norse cosmology, with its roots extending deep into the underworld and its branches reaching up into the heavens. While Norse mythology doesn't specifically mention tree nymphs like Dryads, the idea that trees hold immense spiritual power and that they are living, breathing entities with their own forms of consciousness is a concept that resonates across many cultures. In Japanese folklore, there are also spirits known as kodama, similar in nature to Dryads. These tree spirits are believed to inhabit ancient trees, and cutting down a kodama's tree was considered an act that could bring about a curse or disaster. In Japanese Shinto belief, the forest itself is seen as sacred, with many shrines built within or near groves, echoing the Greek idea of the sacred grove. Trees are regarded as living beings that house kami, or gods and spirits, making the destruction of a tree akin to an offense against the divine. Returning to the Greek Dryads, one of the most significant aspects of their mythology is their role in the stories of love and desire. In many myths, Dryads are depicted as objects of affection or lust, often pursued by gods or mortals. These stories, while often romanticized, also contain deeper themes of nature's power, resistance, and transformation. Dryads, much like the natural world itself, are portrayed as beautiful and alluring, but also untamable and resistant to domination. Take, for instance, the myth of Syrinx and Pan. Syrinx was a beautiful nymph associated with the forests and was often depicted as a dryad. Pan, the wild god of the woods, fell madly in love with her and pursued her through the forest. Fleeing from Pan's advances, Syrinx prayed to the river gods to save her, and in response, she was transformed into a bed of reeds, just as Pan reached her. Devastated by her transformation, but still in love, Pan cut the reeds and fashioned them into a flute, the famous Pan flute, which became a symbol of his eternal love for Syrinx. This myth reflects the recurring theme of transformation, found in stories about dryads and tree spirits, where nature itself resists being controlled or conquered. Transformation in dryad mythology often serves as a metaphor for the power of nature to adapt and survive. Just as Daphne was transformed into a laurel tree to escape Apollo's pursuit, Syrinx became reeds to evade Pan. These stories suggest that while nature may be threatened or pursued, it cannot be entirely overcome. Instead, it changes form, adapts, and endures in new ways. This concept speaks to a broader understanding of nature's resilience, its ability to renew itself even in the face of destruction. The theme of transformation and rebirth is also mirrored in the seasonal cycles of trees. In autumn, trees shed their leaves, appearing to die, only to bloom again in spring. This cyclical process reflects the enduring nature of life itself, which is constantly renewing and evolving. Dryads, as personifications of trees, embody this idea. Their fates are tied to the life cycles of the trees they inhabit, and their stories often reflect the seasonal transformations of the natural world. In ancient Greece, it was common to leave offerings at the base of trees believed to be inhabited by dryads. These offerings were a way of showing respect and seeking the favor of the tree spirits, especially in matters of agriculture and fertility. Farmers would pray to the dryads for a bountiful harvest, while those who sought to clear land or harvest wood would make offerings to ensure they did not incur the wrath of the spirits. This practice reflects a deep-seated belief in the interconnectedness of humans and nature, where the health and prosperity of the land were directly tied to the respect shown to the natural world. The reverence for dryads and the trees they inhabited can also be seen in the ancient rituals performed in sacred groves. These groves were often dedicated to gods such as Artemis, Demeter, or Dionysus, and were considered holy places where humans could commune with the divine. In these groves, priests and priestesses would perform rituals to honor the spirits of the trees, and it was believed that the dryads would watch over these ceremonies, ensuring that the natural balance was maintained. Interestingly, the connection between dryads and fertility extends beyond agriculture and into the realm of human life. In some myths, dryads were said to be able to bestow fertility on women or to influence the outcome of childbirth. The belief that the spirits of the trees had power over life and death speaks to the ancient understanding of nature as a force that both nurtures and destroys, a duality that is reflected in many of the myths surrounding Dryads. Despite their often elusive nature, Dryads were not entirely separate from the human world. There are several myths in which Dryads fall in love with mortals, and in some cases, they even bear children with them. These stories illustrate the delicate balance between the human and natural worlds, where the boundaries between the two are fluid and interconnected. In some versions of these tales, the children of Dryads and mortals are blessed with special powers or an unusually strong connection to nature, emphasizing the belief that humans, too, are a part of the natural world and not separate from it. One of the most touching myths involving a Dryad and a mortal is the story of Philemon and Baucis, an elderly couple who showed hospitality to the gods Zeus and Hermes when they visited their village disguised as beggars. As a reward for their kindness, the gods transformed their modest home into a grand temple and granted them their wish to die together. When their time came, they were transformed into intertwined trees, an oak and a linden, standing side by side for eternity. While this myth doesn't explicitly mention Dryads, it carries the same themes of transformation and the deep connection between humans and the natural world. In modern times, Dryads have continued to captivate the imagination. Their legacy lives on not only in literature and art, but also in contemporary environmental movements. As the world becomes more aware of the importance of conserving forests and protecting ecosystems, the Dryads' role as guardians of the trees feels more relevant than ever. They symbolize the fragile beauty of nature and the urgent need to preserve it for future generations. In many ways, Dryads have evolved from mythological beings into symbols of environmental awareness. They remind us that the natural world is alive, vibrant, and deserving of our respect. Just as the ancient Greeks believed that harming a tree could incur the wrath of the gods, today's environmentalists warn of the consequences of deforestation and ecological destruction. In a world where the forests are shrinking, the Dryads' message is clear. We must learn to live in harmony with nature, or risk losing something precious and irreplaceable. So, the next time you walk through a forest, pause for a moment. Look at the trees around you, and remember the ancient myths of the Dryads who once inhabited them. Though we may no longer believe in tree spirits in the way the ancient Greeks did, their stories still resonate with us, reminding us of the deep, sacred connection between humanity and the natural world. The forests are more than just collections of trees. They are living, breathing ecosystems that house a delicate balance of life. And perhaps, just perhaps, if you listen closely enough, you might hear the whispers of the Dryads watching over their trees as they have done for millennia.
Thanks for watching. It will be nice to see you again in the world of mythical creatures.